Turn back to that disaster that's been left behind from Hurricane Helene. We showed you the problems in North Carolina, but what about the region where the storm actually made landfall? Florida's Office of Insurance Regulation says damage has already topped $900 million. So here with us now to talk more about what's been going on is Florida Republican Congresswoman Cammack. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So how are your constituents doing? How's recovery efforts? How's it all going?
They are the most resilient people that you will ever want to meet. I unfortunately believe that Florida has become so proficient and efficient with these storms because we see them quite often, particularly in my district, since this storm was a direct hit to my area and to the north of me. We've seen 3 major hurricanes in 13 months, and it's devastating, not just along the coastlines where we have primary residents that have lost their businesses, their homes, entire local economies wiped away in an 18-foot storm surge, but inland, the impacts to agriculture. We've lost over 100 chicken houses and, pivots. The infrastructure is just gone. But all that being said, we still are seeing the worst of the worst in Georgia and the Carolinas, particularly North Carolina. And while we're actively engaged in recovery, we have folks from our district that are trying to help in North Carolina as well. It's really devastating, but true to the American spirit, we all are resilient, gritty, and scrappy.
Yeah. I want to hear what you think about the difference in how this has been handled by the media and also by the federal government in the different states. North Carolina is my home state, and people are starting to say that they're feeling forgotten. It's 9 days out. Hundreds are still unaccounted for.
Yeah, and this is what we have said all along. There is no place for politics in disasters like this. There is no R, there is no D. We are all Americans. And as I said, unfortunately, Florida has become very efficient with these storms. We coordinate very well, the federal, state, local officials all working together along with nonprofits. I think the officials in North Carolina were caught a little off guard, and I've seen and heard reports where Good Samaritans, pilots who are using their own resources to do search and rescue, where FEMA, for example, has maybe fallen down on the job, maybe they're stretched a little too thin. They've been threatened to have their licenses taken. And so I actually had a conversation with the Undersecretary of the FAA yesterday, and they are going to work to make sure that no pilots, no Good Samaritans have adverse action taken against them. But at this point,
my goodness, that's a story we need to dive deeper into. Thank you for bringing that up, because I was actually with those pilots in North Carolina at Statesville Regional Airport on Tuesday and Wednesday using helicopters and small aircraft. Good Samaritans coming from not just North Carolina, but everywhere. Exactly. And they weren't getting political about it. In fact, they didn't have time to be watching the media coverage and reading the headlines. What they were doing is helping the people that were in their area, right? They know the terrain. These are their people, and they're helping. So that's something we need to dive into. Let's talk about the money. FEMA saying it's running out of money. Where do we go from here? These people need their money.
Absolutely. And I think it's absolutely repugnant that Alejandro Mayorkas, Secretary of DHS, who just 3 months ago said that they were well equipped and ready to handle any potential hurricanes coming down the pipe, that now they're poor-mouthing Americans. And as you said, North Carolina has been hit. They've been devastated. They need help, and they don't have time for politics. No one does. So we actually have just seen a replenishment, which took place in October 1, of $20 billion. Now, back in June, House Republicans passed an appropriations bill that was $22.7 billion with reforms that would have allowed FEMA to get those resources into communities faster. But I think Americans are very concerned about the fact that the temporary housing and shelter program has been diverting for the last 4 years over $1 billion to illegals at the border through NGOs.
Yeah, well, what needs to happen? Because we're still, a couple months left in hurricane season.
Absolutely.
We're not done yet.
Absolutely. I think there needs to be an immediate cease of the NGOs that are effectively laundering money from the administration, from FEMA. This is money that goes to homeless veterans. This is money that goes to people in need. And there is, in fact, documentation and proof that FEMA has siphoned off $1 billion plus through this program to take care of plane tickets, bus tickets, and housing for illegals at the border. I think we need to put Americans first. Regardless of the politics, this is a priority. It has to happen now. And President Biden has the ability to make that happen today.
I think there are a lot of lessons that are going to be learned from this storm.
Absolutely.
What can the other states learn from this storm? There are hard lessons that Florida seems to already have learned.
Yes. I would say coordination of the federal, state, local, and nonprofits need to really work in tandem with one another. We have had great governors, Governor Rick Scott, now Senator, and of course, Governor Ron DeSantis, they have really exemplified what it means to be a leader with boots on the ground. And that means there's no egos in the room. It's just getting the aid to people who need it the most. And I think North Carolina, there's a little bit of a rub between the states, the locals, and as the wife of a first responder, I can say how much it really impacts the people on the ground. Someone who is trying to help when there's politics at play at the state or the national level. Everyone needs to just come to the table, put the egos to the side and say, we've got to get help, we've got to get power, we've got to get water, we've got to get housing to these individuals. And of course, now in North Carolina, we still have active search and rescue missions on.
Yeah, and just because there's a town that is cut off essentially because of the roadways being washed out and cell phone service being washed out, that the aid isn't too slow getting in.
Right.
Thank you so much. Florida Congresswoman Kat Cammack, thank you so much.